Hi, I'm Esparza, and I'll be giving a presentation on the mental, physical, and behavioral effects of fear. So what is fear? Fear is an emotion provoked by an interpreted threat. It is part instinct, part learned, and part taught, and contrary to what many people think, it is actually healthy. So fear is good for you? Well, some fear is good for you. Fear keeps people aware, attentive, and alive. So yes, fear is good for you, but only to an extent. When uncontrolled, fear affects people mentally, physically, and behaviorally. How does it affect people mentally? Uncontrolled fear can lead to mental and psychological effects on people. For example, the COVID-19 outbreak has led people to get feeling symptoms of depression, insomnia, denial, anger, and fear all around the globe. It has affected essential workers, government officials, and even people just stuck at home in quarantine. Fear can also lead to PTSD. The brain responds to stressful situations. Uncontrolled fear can cause the brain to remember certain events negatively, since the brain is in an overactive state. The brain then stores information such as the sounds, sights, and smells of the day. Since those senses were associated with fear and danger, when the person experiences one or more of those senses again, they may find themselves in a state of panic and not know why. For example, if someone gets mugged and it's a foggy night, the next time they're walking out on a foggy night, they might end up with having panic, and they might not really be able to pinpoint exactly why they feel that way. Fear can also affect the memory and certain brain functions such as processing and reactivity. While it is good to be aware and know what is going on around you, there's no use in letting fear turn into an unhealthy amount of stress and worry. So what can people do about the mental effects? Well, the Centers for Disease and Control, the CDC, has shared a lot of information with the American public, including ways to cope with fear during this stressful time. Number one would be deep breaths. Deep breaths are shown to calm people down. They lower the heart rate and blood pressure, and they create a balance with the chemicals in your brain, such as dopamine and serotonin. The second would be meditation. So meditation, similar to taking breaths, calms people down, and it also creates balance with mental health. And number three would be talking to others. During the COVID-19 pandemic, many people have been fearful. So maybe talking to others via phone calls, Skype, FaceTime, you name it, could be a good way for people to socialize and get things off their chest. It also helps for people who have been feeling isolated during this time. It is very important that people learn to control their fear for the sake of their mental health. How does fear affect people physically? I'm going to separate this into two sections. So part one, fear can cause a lot of unnecessary stress, therefore causing the body to respond in a negative way. And part two, people's fears can prevent them from doing certain necessary things to keep up their good health. When fear becomes uncontrolled, this is part one. When fear becomes uncontrolled, it affects the mind. The body then suffers the physical consequences. The CDC released that stressing during the outbreak of an infectious disease can affect eating and sleeping patterns and worsen chronic health problems. Fear also weakens the immune system, which can affect people with autoimmune disorders such as celiac or lupus. Fear can also cause gastrointestinal problems and can eventually lead to premature death. So what can people do about these physical effects? Well, number one, there's calming techniques as mentioned before, such as meditation or yoga. Number two would be eating a healthy diet full of good nutrients and vitamins. And number three would be going outside because sunlight and vitamin D help boost the immune system. How does fear affect people physically? Part two. People have been working out less for various reasons, and many people have been stuck at home eating unhealthy food. So by eating unhealthy and not exercising, many people have developed bad habits such as overeating and could potentially suffer from health complications later on, such as obesity or diabetes. People are holding off on going to the hospital if it is not COVID related. Checkup and child vaccination rates have decreased significantly, leaving children susceptible to different kinds of diseases. After showing symptoms of a heart attack, a woman said she would rather die than risk getting coronavirus right now. Many doctors are worried that people, like the woman before, are delaying seeking emergency medical treatment for fear of contracting the virus. So what can people do about these physical effects? There are a number of solutions to the physical effects of fear-based actions. Number one would be to eat healthy food. Number two would be telehealth. This allows patients and doctors to communicate virtually. And number three would be exercise. Exercise releases endorphins, creates new neural pathways, and grows the hippocampus, which shrinks in people suffering from depression and fear. How does fear affect people behaviorally? During the COVID-19 crisis, many people, including essential workers, have become more and more concerned with their health and the health of their loved ones. Fear affects the human mind, telling it the body is in danger, therefore changing the behavior of the individual. As seen in the news, people's fears have driven them to do insane things, such as overbuying supplies like toilet paper, hand sanitizer, water bottles, and fighting people in grocery stores. Overbuying supplies leaves those most susceptible to the virus without anything to bring home. With fights breaking out in grocery stores, it really makes one question, is the fear people at home are experiencing caused by the virus itself, or the hostility and actions of other fearful people? Nicole Wetzman stated, "It's good to prepare for disruption to everyday life, but there's a difference between preparedness and panic buying, and the latter can cause shortages." In the image below, 17-year-old Destiny Valdez poses in a Walmart toilet paper aisle. It is completely empty due to people panic buying. Coping with fear is of vital importance, especially in the current COVID-19 situation. The CDC recommends taking breaks from the media. Constant exposure to news about the coronavirus can be upsetting and can eventually entertain people's fears. Another way to cope with fear is to avoid alcohol. The after effects can make people feel more anxious than they were before. Finding home-based projects to do is a good distraction from fear while improving a certain skill. Why is this important? Well, whenever the COVID-19 situation dies down, whether things go back to normal or not, it is imperative that people learn how to cope with fear because the effects can become long-term, forming bad habits in the process. It is not a matter of simply overcoming the fears for the present, but it is also about preparing for what is to come. President Roosevelt himself said, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." People must learn to control their fears before their fears control them. And that's all, folks. Thanks for watching.